Books and Booze, a bookish and wine induced podcast from two book lovers who have never met. That is the power of the internet.
Hi Esther, thank you so much for joining us on Books and Booze.
Thank you very much, Jade. Delighted with the opportunity to be here with you girls.
Can I just say I love your accent?
Thanks very much. You'll be fed up of it by the end of the interview, but that's all right.
Never. Irish people can talk forever to me. I love it.
My husband's the same. He's obsessed with the Irish accent, so he's going to be really happy with this episode.
That's good. That's good.
Well, we're really happy to have you on our podcast to chat about The House of Second Chances. It's a very different book for us because we do predominantly read thrillers. We absolutely loved it, which was, for us, it was surprising to enjoy a romance as much as we did because of our normal pick is thriller. And it was just a really vivid and gorgeous book full of really entertaining characters.
That's so nice to hear you say, Jade. Really, really grateful for that. I suppose, it is quite a full book, really, in terms of all the characters and the goings on. But it is very much, I suppose, this new term, life lit, about ordinary people's lives, really.
I like that, life lit. That is a good way to describe it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was, I think Rachel Johns was the first person I heard of using it, but it mightn't be hers. But I think it's overtaken chick lit, which had a bit of a bad, kind of a reputation among some people. To be honest, I don't care what they call my genre, as long as I'm in the running, I'm not precious or anything. But I think the life lit thing does encompass really the different sort of relationships in life. It can be, well, in The House of Second Chances, I was writing about the relationship between two sisters, between friends, between a mother and one of the sisters, and both of the sisters actually, and a husband and a wife, and I obviously have the love interest as well. But I'm very interested in just all sorts of family and friendship relationships, really.
Yeah.
Let's start with what drink you picked to pair with your book.
Well, my drink of choice tonight, girls, and cheers. Here's to
Cheers.
Cheers.
Probably the lightest, lowest in calories and alcohol bottle of bubbles you can find in any bottle in Australia. And that is because I'm one of these people, 2 drinks, and I'm either under the table or dancing on the top of it, Here's tea. And as we say in Irish, Saloncha. To your hotel.
What did you pick, Jane?
I have something very different for me. It's still Shiraz, which I love, but it's sparkling Shiraz from Seaview.
I love that, Jade.
Yeah, it's my first time having it, and it's actually really tasty, especially for summer because it's so hot right now.
Yeah, I went with channeling Aiden. I went with a low carb beer because it's very hot in Sydney. Yes.
Very you and I must be on the same wavelength there now. To be honest, yes, there is that little theme, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, I was quite fond of Aiden, so I thought I'd honour him and have a low carb beer this evening.
Oh, good on you, Chiara. I'm delighted to hear that because he's very much the beta male, isn't he?
Yeah.
And you just want to give him a big hug, really.
You do, yeah. He's got that like teddy bear kind of quality. You want to give him a cuddle.
Definitely.
So on that note, I know you mentioned briefly about your book being a lot about different relationships and things like that, but can you give us a brief synopsis of your book, just so for all the listeners that would maybe want to pick it up after this, so that they can know what it's about?
Sure, Jade. Well, my debut novel was called Leaving Ocean Road, and that was about, you'll remember the character Ellen O'Shea from The House of Second Chances, and she was actually the main character, or one of the main characters in my debut novel. And I got to the end of that book, and I really didn't want to let go of Ellen and Jerry Clancy, who you'll have read in this second novel as well. And I really wanted to, and a lot of people ask me, what happens to them? What's their story now? And I'm a great fan of the late great Maeve Binchy, and she had a beautiful, I mean, was an absolute master of storytelling. She had a beautiful sort of a way of weaving in characters from previous books into her novels. So people would pop up and you'd think, oh yeah, I remember that person or whatever. And I thought, well, look, in for a penny, in for a pound here. I've got nothing to lose. I'll have a go and I'll keep. So I made a couple of the minor characters in Leaving Ocean Road, the main characters, that's Colette and Aidan, of course. And I threw them into this house renovation project in a beautiful part of Ireland, West Cork, in the south of Ireland, along the coast there, the south coast. And it developed from there, really. So these two characters really would prefer not to be working together. It's a big challenge for both of them. They do not see eye to eye. They're coming from different perspectives. She's the interior designer. He's the builder, as I say. And as far as he's concerned, he just wants to get the project out of the way as quickly as possible. And he has a struggle with the house because of, in his sort of past life, something has difficult for him to work there. So she also, of course, comes with her own struggles and issues. She's coming out of a painful divorce. And the house really gives the two of them an opportunity to heal these hurts. But in order to do so, they really need to get out of their own way. So that's basically what the basis of the House of Second Chances. There's no need to have read Leaving Ocean Road to enjoy the house. But that kind of explains where I sort of got the idea from.
Yeah. And it does work well as a standalone.
I love that you've incorporated the previous characters. I think that's a really nice touch.
They're kind of like your children. Hey, you can't let them go.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, I came to writing quite late, probably 40 when I started writing novels and having a go. But I used to think that it was always a little bit corny when you heard people saying, oh, they've got these people in my head. And then when I sort of finished that first novel and I still had these two in my head, or a few of the characters in my head, I thought, I'm either going nuts or else there's another novel to be written. So I went with writing the next novel. So yeah.
That's great.
So you're a bit of a traveller, like Jade and I. You've lived in South Australia, Tasmania, Ireland, Scotland, Norway. Do you have a favourite of these places? And do you think that these places acted as a muse for you for your books?
That's a very interesting point, Chiara, because at the moment I'm on stages, but I'm setting part of it in Tassie, where I live. Mm-hmm. And I've been living here for 6 years. So it's actually taken me that long to have the kind of notion to actually write about it. And I think part of it is about maybe landscape and, the dialogue and the humour of the area. It kind of takes a while. I don't know if you girls would agree. I'd be interested to hear what your take on it. But for me, it takes a while to get under my skin because I'm always missing the place I lived last.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, well, that was a great place. That was the best place ever. And I absolutely love Port Lincoln in South Australia. I go back as often as I can. I think Norway is the number one country in the world to live. I had a fabulous experience there 3.5 years. My children were small and, we lived in the sticks and we all had to learn the language to even be able to communicate with people, and it was fabulous. Scotland, was there 7.5 years, thought I was going to die there. I had my name down in the home nearly, I don't know what, that was a lot. It was only my 30s then. But, Ireland, I mean, needless to say, I absolutely love Ireland. But I think there is something to be said for, all that mindfulness stuff now is very much in vogue. But I think it's quite appropriate because you really only have the moment and you might as well enjoy what's in front of you And, Tasmania is probably one of the easier places in the world to integrate and, have a nice lifestyle and that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and it's great because we're finding with a lot of the books that we've been reading lately, the authors are really making the places where the books are set a character in their own. So with JP in New Zealand and Chris Hammer and, the Outback and Jane Harper as well in the Dry. And it's really nice to see like people are really giving the books are set a life of their own.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, I loved listening to your chat with JP about New Zealand, and you were saying that you lived there till you were 8. Now, to me, 8 sounds, still quite young, and I can't imagine that attachment. But my husband is from one of the Orkney Islands, and I'd been to Orkney mainland before, but I'd never visited the small island he's from. It's called Sandy, and he took us back a couple of years ago, and it was only then that I understood the impact that 8 years had on him and how important that was and will always be to him. So I was really listening to your interview with JP thinking, yeah, I get that. I get how living somewhere until you're 8 can be really important. Yeah.
I grew up in England, and then I moved to South Africa when I was 10, but I still consider England my home. I haven't lived there since I was 10, but it has such a special place in my heart.
And the funny thing, Jade, I would have picked the accent, which is amazing.
It's very strange. My whole family sounds completely South African, and
Yeah, you do. And without having this face-to-face chat, when I had listened to you on the podcast when I was just having a little bit of a research, I would definitely have picked you as English, which is amazing. And you'd left there at 10. Yeah, amazing.
What age did you leave Ireland?
Well, I was quite old. I mean, I did a master's degree in Aberdeen when I was in Scotland when I was about 21. But other than that, I didn't leave Ireland until, apart from, a few stints working abroad in summers at uni and that, until I think I was nearly 30. I think I had my 30th birthday in Scotland. So I think that's quite important to my writing because I did live for so many years of my adult life in Ireland. And I think, it doesn't matter where you live, but it really does inform your perspective and your sort of feeling towards a place and that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't get home at all as often as I would like, but we're blessed now with things like Facebook, and you can keep up with friends, and I probably keep up with more friends now than I would if I was living there, for example,
Yeah.
So it's great. Yeah, it's good.
Another important part of your writing and your books is your characters. So you had a number of characters in your latest book, The House of Second Chances. How did you go about remembering all of their different personalities and their backstories?
That's a terrific question, Jade. Sometimes, I mean, a novel is a big thing, and sometimes I do think to myself, how did I ever remember that stuff? Because, you can, there's a lot of people, they're great tech savvy people who use Scrivener and things like that. I mean, I'm not, but I don't think it matters. I think regardless of how you do it, how you sit, to be able to keep it all in your head. And that's the nerve-wracking part, and that's what's beautiful about the publishers. I mean, Hachette have been wonderful. I've really thoroughly enjoyed the process of editing, because of course it's quite lonely, but writing and being a writer, but when you get to that stage where you've got something to hand over to them and then they sort of take it apart really and they give it back to you, that's the fun bit, that kind of back and forth. And people are very good, very talented copy editors and proofreaders and that, who will pick you up if you have lapsed a little bit and lost a bit of a thread of how somebody is, or they'll say something to you like, would she really say it that way? Or, and you look at it and you think, oh, absolutely not. That was a complete stop up. Let's change it to maybe a softer tone or a harsher tone, or as you say, in keeping with the personality of that character. So I do love that side of it. I love the editing, probably because I'm a sociable person, as you probably gathered. And I do like to be part of a team, and I love that team part at the end, which is great. So, I'm holding all the characters and different personalities. I can see the difficulty of it, but what's lovely about it is, as Chiara was saying earlier, they do kind of inhabit my head, and I get to know them so well that it starts like not tripping off the tongue, like was tripping off your fingers as you're typing. You kind of you stay true to their character, I suppose. Yeah. Even at the very end, I suppose the end and the very beginning are the hardest parts. At the very end, you want everything to be crystal clear, absolutely correct before anybody reads it. That's why I hate those unbound proofs, because it's so mortifying if anything has gone wrong, But at least you still have another chance, It's not the actual finished product yet, but the very beginning is also where you're trying to work out whether a child is 8 or 11 or 6 or 5. That's quite a challenge as well, because you're kind of keeping all that in your head and you're wondering, well, I got that right here. And if you're like me, I mean, some people just throw it all down. And I think that's probably very good advice, definitely. But I'm a bit of an editor. I've got a bit of an editor in me that won't shush. And I keep going back and kind of making little changes here, there, and everywhere. But it's part of the enjoyment for me. I couldn't do it any other way.
So we talked a bit about your writing process there, but do you want to talk a bit more about your writing process? Like, we've talked to some people and they prefer writing at night or in the morning, and like our listeners really like to learn that part about everyone's process. So what would be a normal day for you if you're writing?
On a good day, when there are no interruptions, which is certainly not every day in my case, I just amble in like about 10 o'clock, depending on when I get up. I'm not a great sleeper, so I tend to do you know that feeling where your head is like a cannonball in the morning if you haven't slept well, and you can't get up at like the 6 a.m. start you promised yourself? Well, I'm one of them people. So I'll amble in about 10 o'clock, and then I'll probably get a good couple of hours, and then I'll be looking at the dog will be looking at me and asking me for a walk, and then I'll be thinking about lunch, and I'll have taken about 3 breaks in between all of this, of course, with cups of tea and coffee and the whole lot. And I'm on this thing now, this kind of again, in keeping with the House of Second Chances, I'm on a bit of a campaign with the calories and the carbs and the whole lot, and I'm off the milk, you see. So I have to drink black coffee, and then I'm on all these fruit teas. So I'll be on the peppermint tea or the detox or whatever I'm on. So numerous breaks. I get a couple of hours, and then of course I'm delighted with myself. I'll write one scene, and I think I'm fantastic. Do you know? I mean, and then I look at the word count, and my face kind of falls if you were to see it. And then I think, right, what will I do now? Will I go for a walk with the dog, clear the head, or will I? And usually I just power on. I get so fed up with myself, I just sit back down after lunch and just get another hour in or whatever. But I'm not I was speaking to my sister about this. I said, they're all going to ask me about my writing routine, And she said, well, Esther, you were never one for routines, so how can you possibly tell people you have a writing routine? So I feel like an absolute fraud. And, part of being a writer is that, on a night like this, I'm being interviewed by you two lovely ladies, and I feel like a movie star. But tomorrow, there might be a review on bloody Amazon, and I'll be thinking, oh, holy God, I'm desperate. I can't write for nuts. Or, do you know what I mean? Or I can't write it. I'm stuck at a scene or something, and I think I'm the world's worst, and I never get another novel written. So it's a terrible roller coaster where I suffer terribly from that imposter syndrome. So you're not doing me any good now asking me about my writing routine, because I tell you, I'm terrible. I wish I had one. But that was a good day. That was a good day, just sitting at the computer and powering on. And I have 2 speeds now, I must tell you, before I go off the topic. My speeds are poodle and beaver. When I'm poodling, I'm making stuff up, and I just poodle away now and again, and I might get a bit of a hook. Like, I have to hook myself, not to mind to say anybody else. And then I get into it and I'm enjoying it and I poodle away. And then when the deadline starts stacking up, that's when I'm beavering. And I will kill myself almost, for a deadline. Like the back, I always wish I could have a massage at the end of every week or something, If I ever make money out of the race, I think I'm going to lock that in. But that might be a while away, if ever.
That's a good motivator.
Yeah, that was a bit of a long answer there, no, but sorry.
No.
Just speaking about one thing you just said, though, so do you read your reviews that you get?
I do. I mean, I know some people, like I read a lot about writing and the craft and about how other people do it. Of course I have, everybody does. And some people say don't bother reading them. Other people say read the ones with the 5 stars.
Yeah.
Or the 4 stars, or the good ones, to kind of give yourself a bit of a boost and know that you're doing an all right job, and at least then you know the audience. But look, I read them all because I'm a great one for the learning. I love learning, and I think everything you learn from everything. Mistakes, bad reviews, good reviews. And the worst review somebody wrote about me somewhere was that it was really funny. It was the ends of the chapters left her wanting more.
Which is a good thing.
And I laughed and I thought to myself, that was probably one of the best reviews any writer could get. Happy days. She only gave it 3 stars, 2.5 stars or something, but I thought, no, that's exactly what I want. That was a good review.
Okay.
So
yeah. I'm a writer myself, and I've asked everyone, just no matter what, just give me honest reviews, and if it's a bad one, just tell me why, so that I can be better in my next novel. I think it's so important as your growth as a writer. And so my other question, sorry, I went a little bit off script there. My other question is, yes.
Yeah, to interject there, sorry to be rude.
Yeah, no.
But as you were talking, I was just saying, good on you. Absolutely good on you. Ultimately, we write for ourselves, Jade, don't we?
Yeah.
We write the stories we want to write. So really, you kind of have to take the feedback with a grain of salt at times.
Yeah.
And be true to yourself in your own voice. So good on you. Yeah.
Thank you. I get some reviews sometimes where it's like a 1 star with no reasoning, and then all their friends also give it 1 star, and I can tell they've never even read the book, and they're just being nasty. It's made me very angry. But then, who was it? I think it was our interview with John Purcell.
Yeah, John Purcell.
Yeah. He wrote The Girl on the Page, another Aussie author, and he suggested to not read reviews and to just keep doing you, and don't ever let them get to you and stuff. But it does, it's your blood, sweat and tears. So
it's totally. And look, it's also a modern phenomenon, not bad reviews and not people being nasty, but the volume of it, the sheer volume of it. And that can be absolutely overwhelming. And I mean, you only need to hear the statistics around cyberbullying and, youth suicide, and it's absolutely shameful, how people are abusing the wonderful technology that we do have. And at times it can be, I mean, you've got to be mentally pretty tough, Jade. At times you've just got to walk away from it, or block it out or whatever, as a writer, and just I love your expression, do you, because I have a 20-year-old daughter who always says that. She says, oh, you do you, Mum.
You do you.
that's lovely.
And it might be contrary to what she wants to be doing or me want to do, but yes, it's lovely. It's a lovely expression.
Oh, the other question I had is, out of all your characters, which which one did you connect with most? Which one did you enjoy writing the most?
Yes, that's a good question. And I suppose I love all my characters. But interestingly, a couple of other people have asked me this, and do you know who keeps coming into my head? It's one of the minor characters. It's Shane from Glasgow. He's not a boy and he's not a man, he's in that sort of about 19, and he comes over to on the kind of supposed to be helping at the interior design agency, Fabulous Four Walls, and Colette's not too impressed. But of course, he's the nephew of her boss, John Buckley, who was a character I actually loved writing. But Shane was a very interesting character to write, and I loved. He was one of the characters that surprised me as I wrote him. With this novel, I found I was a lot more bold, more brave, and things surprised me that I wrote that I didn't know I was capable of writing. And you were saying that you prefer, thrillers as your genre of choice and that sort of thing, but you were quite kind of happy to read my book, The House of Second Chances, and quite enjoyed it. And I was quite sort of glad to hear that. And when you said that earlier, I thought to myself, I wonder, is that because I was a bit bolder and a bit more brave?
You had some really heavy backstories, and there was that deep stuff that they were all dealing with, Shane, whose friend Alex, I won't give anything away, but something very bad happened to him, and Aidan's ex with the daughter, something happens to her, and there's all these little backstories which really created tension in the book, and I think that's why it was so enjoyable for me personally.
And it's interesting that you said that about Shane and John, because actually I was talking to Jade the other day when I finished the book, and I said that was my favorite storyline.
Really? Yeah. That's amazing, Chiara.
Because I really liked it, and I wanted more of them. I really liked them as characters. I thought they were really great, and they were quite minor characters. But yeah, I really enjoyed their storyline. I thought they had a beautiful relationship.
I'm wondering if maybe Shane will make an appearance in your next book.
Oh, there's a great idea for me, Dave. Thank you. I'll hang on to that. All ideas are very gratefully received, I'll tell you. Yeah. That's so interesting. But I think that's the part of it. I think the minor characters, I think by making them quite strong in themselves, I think that really added to the book. To that. And I think that's where that sort of life that comes in. That it's not just about, all straightforward relationships. Life isn't straightforward, as we all know. It's a bit complex, and trying to get that in, and the few layers of it, I think, is what I was quite happy to have written with this second novel.
Yeah.
Are you a Grace or a Colette?
Oh God, no, you got me there now, Chiara. Oh dear, I'm a Grace. Yes, I am definitely a Grace. That's a lovely question, actually. I'm definitely a Grace. It's very funny because I actually have one sister and no brothers, so that was a very interesting relationship to explore, the relationship of sisters. But Grace is definitely the peacekeeper, shall we say, and Colette is the more feisty of the two. That would definitely have to be said. But of course, she's got her own brittleness, which, Grace is very, what's the word? Gracious, I suppose. Mm-hmm. She's well named, really, in a way. I mean, I didn't kind of think about that at the time, but she is, and she doesn't put herself first, in her relationship with her sister. Yeah, she has her own struggles of her own, of course, and she's putting them to one side and not really letting Colette know that she's got any issues. It's all about minding Colette and bolstering up Colette.
Yeah, they're kind of handling her with kitty gloves.
Definitely. But of course, it all comes out in the wash, and
it always does.
Yes, it does. It does. It does. And I liked that, the unfolding of that sort of subplot, if you like.
Out of all the characters and all of the relationships, each one dealt with various different emotions and turmoils of their own. And so without being too spoilery for your book, because we like to keep things we like to make sure no one gets spoiled for the book, which do you think was the trickiest turmoil and emotional subplot to write?
Gee, there was a few of them, wasn't there? I think probably Grace and Ben, the husband, Grace's husband Ben, that would be Colette's brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I started off, the other thing about it I didn't say earlier, Jade, and I don't know about your process, but I'm also a pantser, I write by the seat of my pants, so I don't plot, so I have no idea.
Does that mean you do NaNoWriMo?
No, I would never do that. I don't get up early in the morning to do NaNoWriMo.
Okay.
And I could take my hat off if you did it. Did you do it?
I've never won it, but I'm going to one day.
Well, you go, girl, and I'll be cheering you on. Good on
Thank
you.
you. There's all these different NaNoWriMo writing groups you can get all over the world. There's one in Brisbane that's got, I think, 40 people in it. So if you go onto the NaNoWriMo website, I'm sure there's one in Tasmania.
Yes, there probably is. And there's great. I tried it once, actually. I got about 2 days in and I thought, oh, Christ, this is not for me. I'm terrible slacker. I don't know how I ever got into it. I better get my skates on for the next one. But so the process thing about about being a pantser, like, a lot of people say, well, you can actually write yourself into a complete corner if you're a pantser, because if you have the plot. But I have really learned from these books now that is just the process. I can't do anything about it. I've tried outlining for this next one. I've got nowhere, and I've just decided I have just got to write it.
If it works, it works.
Yeah. So I'll just stick to the program and just keep going. But it did lead to that sort of, teasing out that backstory between Ben and Grace, because I set them up as, family of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all idyllic in that household on the face of it in the beginning of the book. And to find out what was going on in the background, that took a while. That was that teasing out that you're talking about, Jade. Whereas others, it was a bit easier because I kind of had that in my head. Oh, something, you take for granted that something must have happened to your characters because you've got to give them backstory. But these other minor characters, they're actually more difficult to write, I find, because you're obviously making it up as you go along, and you've really got to engage with them and really invest in them and think, well, what is wrong with that perfect picture? Yeah.
And the swim team played a huge part in your story, and I did read somewhere that you yourself are part of a swim team. How long have you been swimming for, and is it why you included this into your story?
First of all, I must apologise for interjecting all the time, but I loved that question as well.
No worries.
I come from a swimming family. My cousins were great swimmers, and they taught swimming in Cork for years. They still do, a couple of them, and I started swimming competitively when I was about 7, I think. And I used to kind of get the bus home with the wet hair, and then I'm up doing my breakfast and I go into school, all that kind of stuff. And I probably swum on and off for most of my life, being involved in, working in pools and teaching swimming and that whole thing. So, you can imagine coming to Australia, and Australia is obsessed with swimming. There's so much swimming on the telly for the Olympics and everything. So I am in my absolute glory. And I was very disappointed, actually, because when we moved to Tassie, it's quite safe, and I'm touching wood, but compared to Port Lincoln where I lived, which is the sort of home range of the great white sharks, down in Tassie we're pretty pretty good, like, on that front. Not perfect. I know there, things have happened, but I put my kids into the local surf club, and of course I thought I had my own local Bondi Beach, and my kids hated it, and that was the end of my surf club career. Like, I was so disappointed, but I got to tow with a beautiful adult group called the Owls Open Water Lap Swimming, or Old Women's Lap Swimming, whoever you talk to. And they were quite a serious bunch, and I ended up doing 2-kilometer open water swims with them around Devonport and in Port Sorel here where I live, and I just love it. I'm out of training at the moment because I'm on a waiting list for a backup, but I can't wait to be over that and back in the pool because I absolutely love swimming. But the bunch I put into the book, they were really, I loved writing that. They've got this weekly swim session, and it kind of punctuates the book and brings them together on this weekly basis. And I just drew on all the characters and all the swimmers I've come across in my life and just loved it.
So let's talk about your greatest literary influences. Who do you think shaped who you've become as a writer?
Well, I'm delighted you asked me, because talking about swimming, when I worked in a swimming pool as a teenager and taught swimming and was still training, one of the attendants at the swimming pool I used to go to was a man called Jerry Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew him as, part of our swimming pool circle. He's a poet, and he had his first collection of poetry launched in 1985 in Cork, and it was called A Small Fat Boy Walking Backwards. And I was invited to that book launch. And I'll be very honest with you, girls, all the kind of politics and the history went completely over my head. He's a very knowledgeable man. But I loved his love poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very taken with the boldness of his work. And we'd be in the pool on a shift together, and he'd show me, I still have one of his, I'm very lucky. One day he gave me, those spiral notebooks, kind of like a traveler's notebook. He used to write his poems on those in the tea break, or, probably when he was supposed to be working as well. But anyway, he wrote all his poems. He used to write. He was a fantastic role model as a writer because he wrote every day. And he'd show you the latest, and I'd read it, and sometimes I'd get it, and sometimes I wouldn't get it, But he just, he was a living, breathing writer. And although it wasn't until, as I say, I was sort of 40-ish before I came to writing myself, it was his work that was the big influence. And that was about writing what you want to write. And although I don't write literature as such in terms of literary fiction, certainly not, I took great courage and comfort from his journey and his writing. I know he's got about 8 or 10 collections of poetry published. In fact, somebody told me he's a household name in Ireland, which is amazing. And I'm very lucky. I met him, had a few pints with him the last time I was home, and he's a great supporter, and we've great banter on Facebook and this kind of stuff. He's fantastic. But Jerry Murphy, if you're ever looking for poetry, he's a wonderful voice, and I just feel very lucky to have been part of the circle at the time that made writers real people.
That's fantastic. That's a really cool story. I like it.
Yeah. Can you describe the House of Second Chances in 3 words for us?
Okay. Stone, shabby chic, loving.
Very nice. They're very different from what we're used to when authors describe. I like it. Very, very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we've touched on this a little bit, but let's talk about what's next for you. So we write questions, obviously, before we talk, but obviously it flows into other stuff. So you have mentioned that you are working on something else. Does it have any characters from Second Chances?
Yes. And it has the house.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Yes.
So, I'm trying to think now. I
Uh,
have a slight idea of maybe what it might be.
yes. Well, the house is definitely part of it. And some people said to me actually that, the house itself is a character, or it's like a character, like you said about landscape earlier, Chiara. To be honest, I didn't realize that until people said it. I didn't really go out to make the house a character and that sort of thing. But it does really reflect well, I think, in the later reading of it, So maybe that's part of that whole not being able to let go and wanting to continue these characters into my next novels. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So to end off our episodes with authors, we really like to go into a bit of boozy banter, and that's when we talk about what we've been enjoying. It could be a book you're busy reading, or a show you're busy watching, or music you're enjoying, anything at all. So besides your lovely glass of bubbles, what are you enjoying?
Well, I'm looking forward to the next Downton Abbey, or the Downton Abbey movie. That's what I'm
Oh, is
looking
there a
for.
movie?
There's a movie, and it's coming out soon, and I've no idea when. And I just read yesterday that the guy who created it, Julian Fellows, I think is his name, he's making another one of these period series numbers. So I can't wait. I love that because myself, I think my daughter was in about year 12, that horrible year in school where it's just head down, bum up. There's nothing you can do. You just have to get through it. And that used to be our little kind of time together watching Downton. And I just got lost in that. I love it.
Yeah.
I love period pieces too. Pride and
Yes.
Prejudice is my everything.
Really? Well, that's very interesting. I love Pride and Prejudice, but my favourite is Persuasion, because I did that for my leaving certificate and it always stayed with me. And actually was in Melbourne, I don't know, the last time I was in Melbourne, and I picked up a copy of it again and I reread it and I wasn't disappointed. But I mean, you can't go wrong with Jane Austen.
No.
I mean, those books, aren't they just wonderful?
Her
Absolutely wonderful.
humour is just fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. The wit, and you're talking about life-lit, but that was the life-lit of its time, and
Yeah.
it is absolutely universal. We can all relate. I mean, they might be in the type, dresses or the whatever sort of hairstyles they had, but the humanity of it is absolutely there. Just fantastic.
Is there anything else that you've been enjoying?
What else have I been enjoying? I'm actually reading something at the moment by an Irish author called Dermot Healy. It's called Long Time No See, and it is a work of literary fiction. So every page, I kind of love it and hate it, because with literary fiction, nothing really happens. But the way it's written, it's so well observed that you're there. And I think it's set somewhere in rural Ireland. I can't remember, but it's very authentic. The characters are wonderful, and the dialogue is quite clipped. So you've got to be fairly awake to be able to follow it. But yeah, it's one of these books. A friend recommended it to me, so I'm battling with it, and I'm determined to finish it. And at times I'm like, oh yeah, I completely identify with that. And then at other times I'm struggling, thinking, oh holy God, am I going to persevere? So yeah, that's Dermot Healy, Long Time No See, and I'll keep going with it.
You mentioned dialogue, and I just have to say, I should have mentioned this earlier, that your novel, something I loved about it was the dialogue, because of the Australian and Irish settings and characters, it made the dialogue really quirky and fun.
That's brilliant, Jade. I'm very pleased to hear that, because I think you've got to be quite careful with dialogue. I'm very critical of people who write non-Irish people who write Irish people.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be true to the Australian accents and the expressions and that sort of thing. But I think I might. I don't know if I have an ear for it, but I've certainly enjoyed it. I love writing dialogues. I love the little quips and the jokes and stuff. I mean, the Aussie humour is fantastic, and like just expressions. Even things like you've got a Buckley's. Buckley's chance. These kinds of things.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're so random. And all
Yeah.
the way the words are shortened, this arvo and sunnies and
Aircon.
Yes, aircon. I love it. Absolutely love all of it.
One of our favorites we always talk about is yeah, nah, or nah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what does that even mean? Oh my God. Yes, it's like
very uniquely Australian, isn't it?
Yes. At home we'd say, you'd ask somebody to do something and they'd say, I will, yeah, or I will, yeah, in a minute, which means I have no intention of doing it. So, the complete opposite. So, yeah, we all have our little quirks. It's lovely.
In South Africa, you say, if someone says, "Oh, can you go to the shops?" and you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go just now." Like just now for us means in a minute,
Yeah.
or a little bit later.
Yeah.
But in other places like England, just now means now. So
Right
it's
now.
so complicated.
It is. And it really reflects the personalities of the places, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, actually, you've just triggered just a memory of an English friend I have, one of my best friends in Tassie, and she despairs. I remember the first time I said, "Oh, lads, tonight," which is a sort of an exclamation at home. "Oh, lads, tonight." It's kind of a surprise. And she turned and she said, "What are we doing tonight?" And I said, "It has nothing to do with any event. It's just, I'm surprised at what you were saying." It's like, makes no sense to anybody except those people. But it's those sort of, and every nationality has them, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Different lingo.
Definitely.
What have you been enjoying, Chiara?
So I had mentioned to Jade my little one was very sick last night, so he woke up, and then when they're awake. He's 16 months, so when they wake up in the middle of the night, they're up for the night. So we watched Pocahontas last night, and I haven't watched Pocahontas in such a long time. And he was rapt. Like, he's not one that sits and watches movies, but he sat and he watched the whole movie. I was pretty impressed by him. And then I've been reading The Book Ninja, which is by Ali Berg and Michelle Klaus. And they do, I don't know if you've heard of it. Have you heard of Books on the Rail?
No, I haven't.
So it's these two girls, and they set up this program where publishers will send a Book Ninjas a whole bunch of books, and then you pop a sticker on it and you just leave it on public transport. So Jade and I do that for these girls, and then they had an idea from that to write a book. So they wrote a book together, and it's about this woman who wants to find love, and so she decides to take some of her favorite books, and then 7 pages from the end of the book she writes her email address, and she hopes that she'll find a partner that way by someone who shares a common interest in books. So it's very fun, quirky story. Yeah.
But how does she know that she's not? How does she know she's not going to get picked up by like girls?
Well,
Which there'd be nothing wrong. There'll be nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, if you're after a man, then I don't know.
That is a plot point in it. There is a little bit on that. And she blogs about her experience as well, because she's a writer and she got some terrible reviews for her second novel, and so she stopped writing because it crushed her. And then so she started writing this blog, and the blog has kind of reignited her passion for writing. So it's really nice. Like, there's so much tied into it. So yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Oh, very interesting.
What about you, Jade? What have you been enjoying?
So I've got 2 things. One is I started reading a book which is very different. It's a book about possession and insanity, and it's called Come Closer by Sarah Gran. And it's really good. The writing, it's more of a novella really, but the writing is excellent. Although I'm almost finished now, and I was hoping to get more of a scare from it. So it's more of a horror, you know, and it's more about the subtle things demons do when they are possessing you in the early stages so far. And now he's realized that she is possessed, but it's too far along and she can't get rid of this entity. So that's interesting. I'm wondering where it's going to go, but I've heard amazing reviews from other people that I really trust. So I'm hoping to get a bit more of a scare as I finish that up. And then, just on a lighter note, I started watching this show called The Last Resort on 9, and it's really good. It's another one of my reality ones that Chiara cringes at me with, but I love it. It's my guilty pleasure. I've got to, counteract my horror and thriller books by watching girly stuff. So I'm watching The Last Resort, which is all these couples who have reached breaking point in their relationships. They might have been cheated on. One girl was pregnant and told the father that he wasn't the father and he wasn't there for the whole pregnancy, like horrific things. And then they decide they want to try and have a second chance or a last chance together. So they go to this island and they have to work on their relationship. It's very confronting, but it's actually really good. And I'm my partner, he says it's rubbish, but I enjoy it.
Oh, wow. Just listening to you, Jade, thinking, oh my word, the horror stuff, forget it, being possessed. I couldn't even entertain it for a second. But that's actually the Last Resort thing. I would definitely watch that.
It's on 9 now, which is the TV show. I think it's like Stan or whatever. Not Stan, but 9 now. And yeah, I really, really like it.
Wow.
Yeah.
There might be a few storylines there, I'll tell you.
Yeah, there definitely is. Oh, and I started watching Married at First Sight, the new Australian one. It just got released a week or two ago, and I'm hooked. Love it.
Yes, everyone at work always talks about it.
That's good to hear. I did wonder if that would be any good. Oh my word. I wouldn't be allowed to watch that in my house, I tell you. My husband would just give up if I started watching that.
Yeah. I think that's why
Sorry, go on.
I think that's why my partner went off on his Harley Davidson. He was just like, that. I'm going.
Oh, dear. I mean, I think that's what I miss about my eldest daughter is 25, and I kind of miss things like that with her being away. She lives in Adelaide, and just being able to throw yourself down and watch those, fairly light entertainment, and of course there's, strength in numbers, so the husband disappears, like when we're watching that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
I have 2 boys, so I'm going to be outnumbered for my whole life.
Oh, dear.
I'm never going to get to watch anything. I'll read, it's fine.
You're off to a good start with himself watching Pocahontas. That's fantastic.
He did pretty well. I know, I was very impressed. I was like watching him like, oh, really? Okay. He just has to be under the weather.
It's a good thing, though, that you don't actually enjoy the reality TV stuff. So...
Yeah, the only reality TV show we ever have really watched is My Kitchen Rules. Actually, we do have a soft spot for Geordie Shore, which is absolutely feral.
Okay.
And I remember one New Year's Eve, my husband was so hungover, and I was like, let's just watch this. Like, you don't want to watch anything serious. And he was hooked.
Wow. He must have been hungover, oh dear.
Very hungover.
That explains it.
Well, thank you for coming on and talk to us about your lovely book, The House of Second Chances. But before you go, do you want to let everyone know where they can find you on social media?
Yes, I've got a Facebook page, which is Esther Campion Author. And I am on Instagram. I think it's Esther_Campion. So that's the 2 social media things I have at the moment, which I'm quite enjoying. So yeah, it's good. Be delighted with any comments or likes or anything.
book purchases. Everyone go and get your hands on a copy of her book now while it's still the month of love.
Yeah.
That's right, Valentine's on Thursday.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And can I just say thank you very much, girls, for the opportunity. You made it very easy to talk on your podcast. So thank you.
Oh, that's nice to hear. No, it's our pleasure. We love talking to all our authors. We have a special spot in our heart for all of them.
Yeah.
They're like our characters. Hey, Jade.
Yes.
Excellent. Yes, and keep going strong, girls.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, it was
Bye.
great talking to you. Bye.
All the best. Bye
Bye.
now.
Thanks for listening to Books and Booze. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter under BooksBoozePod or email us at hello@booksboozepod.com. We're also on Patreon if you'd like to support our podcast by donating as little as $2 a month. If you're looking for a free way to support us, then you can leave us a review on Apple iTunes or Stitcher. It really helps other people find us. As always, it's been a pleasure. I'm Jade, and you can follow my Instagram at boho_bookworm, and Chiara is my co-host, and you can find her under bookish.kiki. Until next time, happy reading and drink responsibly.